24-year-old Australian woman set friend on fire for making misogynistic remark. Scroll down. You guys might have seen this. That's good. Keep it there. An Australian woman allegedly lit her longtime friend on fire because he made a misogynistic remark during a wild night of partying. A court heard earlier this month. Corby, 24, pleaded guilty in court to the arson attack on Jake Loader, 23, saying she felt overwhelmed by his antagonistic behavior throughout the night before she was finally set off by a sexist remark he made during a house party in New South Wales last year, according to the ABC. Scroll down a little bit. Loader told her she should... So the alleged misogynistic comment was she should stay in the kitchen making scones if she couldn't handle drinking with the boys, which sent the 24-year-old into a rage. The court heard, according to the outlet, she grabbed a gallon of gasoline from the garage and doused the guy with the flammable substance, waving a lighter at him threateningly. Go on, do it. That's a kind of a stupid thing to say. It's like these... Look, I don't condone violence, but if somebody's like threatening you with a gun, you probably shouldn't say, go shoot me, pussy. Like, you probably shouldn't taunt or provoke somebody who's got, who's threatening physical violence. What are you going to do? Shoot me? And then they get...
in the moment.
Look, you shouldn't do it, but come on. All right. He was drunk, though, and he had consumed nose candy, she confessed. Scroll down. Wappily then touched him with the lighter, setting him ablaze. Loader sustained burns to 50% of his body and had some of his sweat glands burned off. He was put in a medically induced coma for 8 days after the attack, according to a victim impact statement read in court. He required 10 operations and spent 74 days in a burn unit at a Melbourne hospital, according to the statement. Scroll down a bit. Suffered burns. The friend, he can't step outside because of the damage. She had been, I guess, drinking and taking substances. She claimed she was pushed to the edge due to his misogynistic comments. Tried to wrestle with her? The fuck? And was being antagonistic throughout the night. She feels horrible, remorseful. Scroll down. All right. Scroll down. I find it very hard to believe the injuries that were caused was from my doing. I mean, you lit the dude on fire. She pleaded guilty to one charge of burning or maiming by using corrosive fluid. So she's back in court this month for sentencing. So I want to go around the table on this, get the panel's reaction. So the allegations here are he was making, throughout the course of the night, various misogynistic comments, get back in the kitchen, something like that. And then she lit him on fire. Do you think that's an appropriate? Think it's a fair response, starting with you, going around the table?
I think if he's less misogynistic now, it's probably a net positive. But if he's not, I'd say it's a bit much.
What's a bit much?
Extreme for her to light him on fire.
Wait, so just to be clear, a man was nearly burned to death, and your knee-jerk initial reaction is, well, if he's a bit less misogynistic.
Net positive, though, not.
That's the. So when you say net positive in totality.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, what she did was really awful, and like he's gonna have to suffer for the rest of his life because of it. But if like his casual misogyny is lessened,
it's a net
positive. Yeah.
What's the math? What's the calculus on it being a net positive?
Let's say if he just stayed like super misogynistic and like got his friends together and they were all kind of like that, then they're kind of causing a lot of hell on women. So if he's less misogynistic now and he's not getting all his guys together to say things about women, it doesn't affect.
I see. So what you're saying is that serious bodily...
He's like a martyr, if anything.
So what you're saying is serious bodily injuries, so long as within your purview, there's a... wait, just to be clear, I can't even wrap my head around the comment you've just made, but violent crime, not as bad, or sorry, violent crime more bad than misogynistic joke.
Not necessarily. I think it's more nuanced, I'd say.
Explain the nuance.
Because if you're constantly talking bad about women in that way,
Sure.
or saying that women, should stick to these sort of roles, it perpetuates in the long term kind of violence against women in general on a grand scale. But also, just to be frank, I was kind of kidding, and it is wrong of her to have done that.
Well, I'm a bit confused. You just said that there was nuance.
It's wrong
Hold
that
on,
she
hold
did.
on.
Okay.
No. I'm saying hold on to her. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think in this specific situation, I'm not saying everyone should light men on fire because that would make the world better. I'm just saying in this instance, if it happened to make him less misogynistic, it's probably a net positive.
Do you know what that?
But I'm not encouraging violence against men.
Right. So what you're saying is, yes, it was bad that he got lit on fire.
Yes.
What she did was wrong. But if the outcome is that he's now less allegedly misogynistic, that it was actually worth it that she burned him. Because in order for your statement to be true, that it's a net positive, it would have to indicate that it's worth it, right? If it's a net positive.
Yeah,
Would you kill Hitler, baby? Baby Hitler, excuse me?
This is too deep of a question.
If you could time travel back in time, would you kill baby Hitler? Because it would be a net positive, right? In your worldview.
Yeah.
So you would.
I don't have a definite answer on that, but I do denounce the genocide of the Jewish people.
Okay, that's not really answering my question, though. So the hypothetical.
I don't know, because what would happen if I killed baby Hitler and then, Mussolini did something even more extreme and crazy? I don't know.
The Italian.
The
butterfly effect.
Yeah, I don't know the butterfly effect, but I would say if the only difference there is that Hitler didn't exist and then, the concentration camps didn't happen.
So what's your, you did, I don't know if you're walking back your position a little bit, doing a Maud and Bailey, but you said that you're joking. Please be more specific, though, because you're saying there's nuance to the situation. So again, is her act justified because of the net positive? Assuming he's going to be less misogynistic now, is it justified to some degree?
I'd say no, violence is not ever justifiable.
But you did say that the net
Well,
positive,
yeah, if we're talking about long-term effects on what potentially his statements and actions could have caused against multitudes of women, more than just one person.
And is this your subjective opinion, or you think objectively?
Obviously. If it was objective, I think that would mean that if we just burned everyone who said that, then the world would be better. But I don't necessarily think that's the case.
Okay. And so what if I had a position that feminist rhetoric is damaging, and there was a movement to basically light on fire every single feminist, and if I could prove to you, if I could demonstrate that it would clearly be a net positive on society to burn feminists, you would then be in favor of that too.
If that were the case and you could prove that, then I guess technically sure, and sure.
Okay, so as long as it's a net positive.
But I'm anti-violence, and I don't think this on a grand scale would actually.
Well, you yourself wouldn't perform or participate in said violence, but if other people could
I still don't
violence.
agree. Yeah, I don't want anyone to be lit on fire. I was just saying.
Okay.
It's potentially less harmful what she did compared to what potentially, but this is all just.
Sure. Why don't I ask you this? So you're a feminist, right?
Sure, if you want to classify it that way.
Well, are you not a feminist?
Probably not in your definition. I care for gender liberation, so.
Gender, what's that?
Just equality and equity for everyone, no matter your gender identity.
So you think feminism is not about gender equality?
Well,
what is
feminism historically, if we are talking about first wave, second wave, third wave, had super specific like reason and outcome, like gaining the right to vote and owning banks and property and stuff like that, or their own bank account. I think now we're in a different situation where we have, in a lot of ways, equal rights legally, but I think socially, women and men suffer in the structure that we have right now. So I'm pro gender liberation, so for everyone.
Okay. I think some people, and what do you think about, are you in favor of deconstructing or dismantling the patriarchy?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I would consider you a feminist then.
Okay.
So, I had a good follow-up question on this. Shoot, it's evading me though. I'm going to think about it. We'll come back to you. Your reaction to that article.
I don't like violence. I hate that. If she wanted to get back at him, she should have gnomed his house.
She should have what?
Gnomed his house or sent like Jehovah's Witnesses or like forked it.
Right.
Prank called.
Okay. Got it. Oh, I recall, going back to you really quick, and then I'll let the rest of the panel weigh in on the thing. So going back to you, it sounded like, and this is perhaps going back to your argument about how net positive, right? So probably this is within the feminist purview. You might agree with the following statement, like women are a victim of violent crime at men's hands. This is especially prevalent in like SA statistics and other sort of forms of like sexual violence and just interpartner violence in relationships, right? Would you say it would be a net positive? So for example, you could probably get rid of most of this, at least within your worldview, if you just got rid of men entirely. Would that then be a net positive to just get rid of all men?
No. I mean, technically, sure, if all the men weren't there, then who's doing the violent crimes and acts? Sure, but I think men are just as much of a victim in the structure that we have now, and that causes them to commit the violence, suppressing your emotions from a young age, putting specific roles on men as man of the house and man up and stuff like that. They tend to act out violently because they can't express their emotions, or they don't have a space like women do, to where like we're known as being emotional, and like so we can kind of have that space together. Not that we're not judged for it, but still we're able to without being emasculated. So although men are the oppressors, it doesn't mean that they themselves aren't victims at the hands of the patriarchy too.
All right. I might get into some of that stuff a little bit later on in the show, but you said men are oppressors?
Yes.
And women are what?
The oppressed.
So just so I fully understand, men are oppressors collectively as a group. Okay, and women are oppressed collectively as a group.
Yes.
Okay, and you're a woman?
Yes.
Okay, are you oppressed?
As a woman. Yes, we live under a patriarchy, so sure.
But how specifically are you oppressed?
I think the main ways that I see it in my daily life is like the hypersexualization of women. Men aren't sexualized in such a way, and then the commodification of that sexualization. So porn and OnlyFans, and it's seen as kind of like women empowerment, but I think it's just teetering a dangerous line of just like becoming that role of women in society.
Would you say the hypersexualization of women, and you said this applies to you yourself, is this systemic or is this on individual level?
I think it's systemic. The existence of porn and OnlyFans affects every woman, no matter if they participate in that activity or not.
But wouldn't these industries also systemically impact men?
In what ways?
Well, you said OnlyFans, porn, they systemically impact women, but then I would argue they systemically also would impact men.
I think so too.
So then men are oppressed systemically because of OnlyFans.
Yes, I'm not saying men have the ability to be the oppressors. I'm not saying that they aren't also oppressed in their own way as well.
Okay.
But it's at the hands of themselves almost, because they have the power to oppress, and they're kind of putting it upon themselves.
Can you clarify?
Not
what you mean
individually.
a little bit?
Just kind of the bro-pilled ideology of like man up and get in the gym, and this is what women want to see, and it's like all kind of, they're not talking to women to see what women really want. They're just discussing amongst other men.
Wait, you think going to the gym is...
No, I'm just saying this idea.
Why did you mention the gym, though? What does that have to do with...
Because I'm thinking about the internet and how that kind of gym content kind of pushes you into this field of like bettering yourself, but then you get into like these conservative...
Are you against men bettering themselves?
No, I'm just saying it's kind of like a rabbit hole that you go into on the internet.
Wait, physical fitness is a rabbit hole for extremist right-wing
Yes.
propaganda?
Yes.
Strength training, weightlifting is...
A lot of the times, yeah.
is a slippery
it's-
slope to
Yes.
right-wing propaganda.
Yes. Because
How?
it's, I mean, think of like Andrew Tate, like he's all about self-betterment and all of those kinds of things, and that's super similar.
Do you know that Hitler was also a vegetarian? Do you think like vegetarians
I'm talking
are
about
also...
media as it is now, not simply because you go in the gym and get stronger to better yourself. You become, I'm saying like the pipeline on the internet is kind of algorithmically leads you there.
Yeah, but just because Andrew Tate advocates for like strength training and getting in physical shape, I don't think you can draw from that then, any sort of advocation towards increasing your health or physical strength would indicate that you're like going to go down some like right-wing
Yeah, I'm just saying
pipeline.
that's mainly what I've witnessed.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think that your scope is a bit, and yeah, it's just a bit narrow-minded? And I'm sorry, like it's a little awkward.
No, that's fine.
Nothing against you.
No.
But, because of social media, right? Like for example, if I only watch the Whatever podcast, I may think, all people think in this particular manner, right? Sorry, I wasn't speaking in the microphone. If I'm only seeing Andrew Tate, and my algorithm pops up more stuff like that, right? And I don't agree with that, I might think that all men operate in a certain way, when in actuality that's not the case whatsoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what I hear you saying is very, very negative towards men, and I happen to think that men are actually pretty incredible, and if you have time to look at all that they really do bring to the table, I think they bring so much more than we do. Because we are very emotionally minded, we think of me, and so on and so forth. And I know that's
Like
kind of
women, you're saying?
Women, right? And I know it's kind of going away a little bit from what you're saying, but I just think that, if you're seeing particular algorithms, especially with social media, then we have this idea that all men are a certain way, when in actuality, that's not the case.
Yeah. I don't think all men are a certain way. I was just drawing kind of a correlation between men's betterment and improvement and getting in the gym. I see strongly correlated to red pill ideologies online.
But what is the problem with, and I don't actually know specifically what red pill ideology is. That like it's basically like the conservative view. Would you agree that it's more that route?
Yes.
And have you taken time to look at what the conservative view actually is when it comes to as society as a whole, and how it contributes to our children and the betterment of society?
Yes. I just kind of disagree with placing binary roles onto people. I think it's dangerous for society, and I think that's why the suicide rates are exponentially increasing. So I just kind of disagree with the idea that men should act a certain way and women should act a certain way. And when I see these types of things perpetuated online, I think that's dangerous, especially when it's kind of strung up as self-improvement and betterment, when it's just kind of like, this is how a man should act. I just think that's dangerous.
I want to let Savannah come in here because Savannah, you describe yourself as feminist worst nightmare.
Yeah.
You've been listening to what she said. She said, I don't want to mischaracterize your argument, but you're saying that the gender roles, or perhaps traditional gender roles when it comes to men and women, these are harmful, can be harmful. Is that a fair recap of your position?
Yes, it can be harmful,
Okay.
yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
So I would agree with you that I think most men that weightlift are conservative, and I think that there's a reason that most men that weightlift are conservative. Like, generally speaking, I think conservatives take better care of themselves. I've never really seen a liberal with a ton of muscle. I think that they're mostly like skinny, weak men. There is that stigma, right? But like the conservative movement, especially with Make America Healthy Again, has pushed that, of course, because our side actually wants people to weight lift, to eat healthier, to stop taking medicine. And the liberal side doesn't want that. So I think that that's not a bad thing for men to be conservative and manly and masculine and weight lift. Would you disagree?
No, I won't disagree. I was just saying there is a correlation there, is all I was saying, which you agreed with as
Yeah,
well.
I agree with that correlation, actually. I just don't think that it's a bad thing. I actually encourage men to weight lift. I think that they should have muscle on their bodies. I think that they should be able to protect their families and have like muscle and strength. Right?
Yes, I agree. I don't think just men. I advocate for health for everyone. I think maybe we see more conservatives with a lot of muscle or into bodybuilding more than maybe people on the left, because the left seems to be more interested in academia. When we look at demographics in universities, they're getting degrees more, and they happen to be Democrats, registered Democrats, rather than Republicans type thing. So I think it's just more of like a social area where, like, if you're conservative, this is your crowd you hang out with, y'all go to the gym. And I think it stems from that binary role of men being strong and protectors and wanting to protect the house and things like that.
But you think that binary roles are dangerous?
If you push them onto everyone, I think if you want to do that in your own time, in your own household, I think if you look at someone who doesn't fit into that binary or gender identity and you say, this is how you should act, man up, I think that can be dangerous.
So you think telling men to weight lift is dangerous?
No,
All
not
men.
to weight lift, just like man up, like emotionally specifically.
I would disagree with that. I think that the reason that we don't live in a society with a bunch of masculine and strong men is because we haven't been telling them that for the past, since first wave feminism started. We haven't been telling men to man up and get in the gym and eat healthier and
You think
get a
men
job.
aren't as manly now, is what you're saying?
I would like everybody to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I was just clarifying. I agree too, but I completely agree, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you want to get married one day.
It's not really on my...
Hypothetically speaking, if you were to be, choosing your husband, would you rather have a man who has a lot of muscle and he's masculine and he provides for you and he takes care of the children and he's the head of the household? Or would you rather have somebody who's passive, feminine, weak-minded, doesn't really look super masculine and manly?
It's all personal preference. I would like a partner who we have equal responsibilities together. If we're talking physique, I do go for, honestly, I want to say I want a tall man with muscles, but I tend to not go for that. But yes, idealistically.
Wait, let's explore that a little bit. So you said your own preferences, right?
Yes.
So you said you would like a guy who's tall and with muscles.
Yes.
Okay, have you dated tall men with muscles?
Maybe once.
Just once?
Yeah.
Okay, you were in a 3-year relationship. How would you describe him physically?
He was taller than me, and he went to the gym. Right.
Biggest relationship, was that the guy who was tall and muscular?
No, that wasn't the guy I was referencing.
Well, you said he went to the gym, though.
Yes.
Okay. Well, when we say muscular, I mean, was he athletic? Was he in good shape?
Athletic? He was getting there, yeah. He went to the gym regularly.
Okay.
But also, again, this is personal preference. I don't think we should force every man to have to be this protector of the household and stuff like that.
I think we should.
I think it leads to the downfall. Like, we may not see, or people may not see this in the immediate, but I mean, it's already here. But long term, I mean, you're looking at really the downfall of society in a sense, not just that alone, but, and I don't disagree that like women should be able to do, all of these things as well, right? However, we've taken women out of the home, other people are taking care of our kids. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, even though there was another man in the house, I essentially raised my son, and I'm an emotional person, and I can tell you without going into detail that I have an emotional 22-year-old who is not a man. and we see it all around us. We have, this lack of masculinity, and I think that it's being looked at as like it's a bad thing to be masculine and a caretaker, and to, even if you want your wife or your significant other to stay at home or things like that. I think when you look as a whole to society, you see why it's necessary, even if, like for me, that means I might have to give up things I want, because there are certain things that I like. Like I don't necessarily want to be at home all the time, but if it's for the greater good, then I would forego that. And I think we have to consider the betterment of society as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's also because, like we were talking about earlier, women are naturally more emotional, and then we know that men, they're just built stronger. So it's like men should work on that, like, privilege, like that benefit that they already have, that they're stronger, so they can take care of the house, like whenever there's anything that's physical that's needed. And then women like us, we should be more with the kids, like in tune with them, and like talking about these emotional things and helping them to overcome like certain troubles, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Jazz, I think you're going to probably disagree with her. She said, I'm just repeating it, that women are more emotional. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think women are more emotional.
But wouldn't that be in contradiction of your, wouldn't that be in contradiction of your whole like rejection of the gender binary?
So there's a biological and genetic predispositions between the genders. So there are differences between men and women biologically and genetically. The way we think, our testosterone, our hormones, sure. But I think nurture has a lot more to do with how we turn out rather than our nature. But I think the way that gender exists right now in such binary roles, we're perpetuating our nature. And I think that's dangerous because there are a lot of gender identities that exist with outside of the binary. So I think it's very limiting to the human experience to say that because we're naturally this way, we should exasperate those differences and not kind of go outside of those binaries, because we can. We just choose not to and think it's better.
So essentially, do you care like about the traditional gender roles that we have already? Like, does it matter for a man to be like going to the gym and stuff like that? And does it matter for a woman to be at home cooking, taking care of the kids, or it's like the roles can be switched and there's like nothing wrong with that?
I see a lot of relationships where the man is kind of the stay-at-home husband and roles are reversed. There's a really popular couple on TikTok, lady with red hair, and her husband like cooks for her all day and she pays him to do that. And I think if that works for them, that works for them. But I do want to go back to something you were saying about how you raised your son on your own and you're a woman and we're more emotional. There are statistics to back that up, that children that are raised with just the mom in the house aren't as well equipped socially in society as if they're raised with just a single dad. And I don't think that's because women are incapable of giving that. I think the way society is constructed, women have to rely on men so much that when the man is missing, then we kind of fail in a sense. And I think that that's wrong. I think we have just as much as an ability to raise somebody, but in the way that we structure gender now in society, it makes us kind of incapable and unable to.
I don't disagree that we are not capable of raising children on our own, but I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
So I'm more likely as a mother, as a woman, to give into things that a father would say, no, things are going to be this way and this is how it's going to go. Whereas I am going to cave into things, or because my marriage was a particular way, I felt like I had to make up for those things by allowing things I should not have allowed. There's definitely, mothers out there who can be very strong, logical, make those decisions and stick to those decisions. But by nature, we are not necessarily like that. And I can see it with my daughter's father. There's times where I think, oh, he's being mean. But over the last few years, as I've come into realizing that there's order for a purpose, I see where where it's okay if dad sounds mean, or, you know, if he's more demonstrative and things like that. So I've come to actually appreciate that and understand the need for it, because I couldn't do that on my own. Yes, there are times where my kid does something wrong and I'm going to raise my voice and I'm going to be very firm and this is going to be what it is. But ultimately, generally speaking, a man serves a different purpose, right? We complement each other. And so I do think that, and I mean, I could go into, you know, the whole feminist, the origins of feminism, not the origins, but some of the reasons behind it is pulling the woman out of the home and creating this disharmony for our children. And again, I went to school, I worked, you know, full time. I was not a stay-at-home mom. And if I had it to go back to do again, despite the fact that, you know, I would have craved more intellectual stimulation than being at home all day, I would have done it because I think ultimately it would have been the best thing to do at least for my son.
Yeah.
With my daughter, you know, I would, well, situation's different, but I would love to do it for her as well.
Mm-hmm. I just would disagree that it's purely nature is the reason that these are the outcomes. I think we perpetuate our genetic differences so much in societal roles that women are incapable in certain areas, like you said, to say no and to do the dad role. And I think it's because we push those roles so much, when if we kind of destructured the way that we had gender identities, then women could be a whole person in a way, and men could also cater to people emotionally and on a different level.
I think that it's always been this way. Like, I'll even grant that if you go way back into ancient societies, if you want to talk about genders and such, you know, there's old or ancient societies that had multiple genders, right? But setting that aside, if you look back at all throughout time, women had a particular role, men had a particular role. And it's actually, instead of, I think it gets demonized, but in actuality, it's a really beautiful thing. And we're trying to change it to fit this new box that's been created. And I just think order exists for a reason. I'm not, you know, nothing against particular people or anything like that, but I can say that, and it doesn't have to be my age. It could just be, you know, the fact that I've learned a little bit more over the last few years. I just think it all serves a purpose. Once you see things, they all fall in line, instead of trying to, like, having a Rubik's Cube and trying to make all these pieces fit when they don't really fit. It just seems to be that way. I don't, you know.
I would like to go back to what you said about pushing traditional roles on men and women is dangerous. But we actually, I mean, in the past, 20 years or so, we haven't been pushing those traditional roles on men and women. We've actually been doing the opposite, and society has gone downhill. So how can you say that pushing traditional roles are dangerous when we've done the opposite and no good has come from it?
In what ways do you think we're all of a sudden not pushing gender norms and roles onto people? And in what ways do you think society is being negatively affected?
I mean, so as far as not pushing traditional roles on people, right? Like, I think as women, we are told now and in this century that our career, our degree, our title is more valuable than being a wife and a mother. We're told that, like, we essentially have no value. I mean, and I can attest to that because I post all the time about my lifestyle on social media, and I post that I don't have a college degree and I don't necessarily have, like, a stable career. And I get a lot of backlash for that. And a lot of people will say, well, you don't really have any, like, value to you. You're not smart. You don't have a degree. You don't have a title. And on men, I mean, you said it, like, they're basically told that they have toxic masculinity if they want to be strong men and they want to be masculine. So I actually think that we've done the opposite, and we haven't pushed traditional roles on men and women. And that's why you see women becoming more masculine and you see men becoming more feminine.
So do you think that all women should be in the house and taken care of?
I don't necessarily think that all women need to be stay-at-home wives and mothers. I mean, in Savannah's perfect world, I wouldn't make women go work 9-to-5 corporate jobs that are literally just not good for their hormones. They're being, bossed around by a boss all day. I don't think it's healthy for women. So in my perfect world, if women wanted to work, they would either go the entrepreneurial route or they would work until they became mothers and then stayed home with the children. But there is a lot of evidence that moms that stay home with their children, the children generally do better in society. So I would say, yes, it's important once you have kids to figure out how to stay home with kids. I don't think that we need 2 incomes in today's society. I think that, you know, we're a society that chases after so many materialistic things, and we need 2 cars, and we need this crazy mortgage, and we need designer bags, and we need 3 vacations a year. I don't think that that's 100% necessary, but society pushes it to where both men and women have to have an income to raise a family. So yeah, I think traditional roles would actually help families. It would bring back the nuclear family to society. I mean, I think it's you see the birth rate, like it's plummeted. That's not helpful for any society. If it keeps plummeting, we're never going to actually like grow our population.
We'll have to move it on a little bit, but we can come back to some of that later. I just want to finish up really quick that thing we were reacting to earlier where the girl was getting the woman doused the guy for the misogynistic comment. Quick reaction from the rest of the panel. Go ahead. What do you think on that?
Was that a boyfriend or just a friend?
I think it was just they were hanging out. It was just a friend.
Okay. Yeah, I don't agree with what she did.
All right.
Should he have kept his mouth shut? Yes.
Your thoughts?
Not appropriate, but he probably said it to get a reaction.
Sure. Okay. Your thoughts?
I think she proved that she can't drink with the boys.
That's a good point. Good point, Savannah. What about you?
I don't know the context, but I'd like to think I would have laughed and just gone to go make him a sandwich or whatever it was he asked for.
Oh, you would have made the actual sandwich. All right. What about you? Your thoughts, Carla?
I think she needs to work on her communication skills. Homegirl needs to buy my book.
Probably just a little bit. Probably work on the communication skills. What do you think?
I'd ignore it and I'd be more concerned for his safety.
Okay, there you go. And then there was one other, Mary, if you can pull it up there. So the comments, though, on this were atrocious. Pull up the Instagram one. We'll go window tab. Just hit the pause on the video. Scroll, zoom, make it bigger. All right, then scroll down so we can see the comments. All right. I'm going to read them.
So she cooked him.
One, anti-misogyny, assaulted, blah, blah, blah. He told her to stay in the kitchen, so she cooked him.
Literally.
90,000 likes. Scroll down.
It's funny though.
Okay, well, what was he wearing? Did he try to tell her to stop? 44,000.
That's good.
Okay, when you use a group A joke with a group B, I'm not sure what that means, but
Isn't
okay.
most clothes flammable,
It's like type
retardant
A,
anyway
type B.
anymore?
This would have not happened if she stayed on the kitchen, though. Okay, scroll down. Why would he get drunk like that alone? He should have known better.
What does that mean?
Like he lit himself.
Just reminder, guys, this guy. Okay,
on coke
I'll read
too,
some more.
wasn't she, or
He basically did tell her to cook. Shouldn't have worn flammable clothes. He obviously wanted it. She's an icon, and she is the moment. Mind you, most of these have like 10,000 plus likes. Bet he won't say that again. I hope it doesn't ruin her life. She has such a bright future ahead of her. Lies. She was with me the whole day. But what was he wearing? But what was he wearing? Again, 8,000 likes, 8,000 likes. Stop defending her. I can't like all the comments. Scroll down. Men throw acid all the time, but when one gets a little charred, okay. Scroll down. But he was asking for it.
What's that emoji?
Scroll down. If he didn't want to be set on fire, he shouldn't have worn something flammable. Scroll down. I'm getting carpal tunnel in my thumb from liking all these comments. Mind you, these are all women, by the way. Wait, did he say no? What was he wearing? This diva. We'll do 3 more, I guess. Scroll down. Scroll down. Scroll down. She was cooking for real. What was he wearing? No, I don't want to be set on fire. I think my objection to this, I know these people are joking, is typically there's like a lot of situations where women are consenting to having consensual sex. There's not a lot of situations where people are consenting to have someone lit on fire. And further, even if you do consent to being lit on fire, the perpetrator of that is still going to be subject to some sort of criminal penalty, regardless if there was consent or not.
Yeah.
Although you could make some arguments. But whatever. Scroll down. Did he loudly and clearly state that? Okay, anyways, you get the idea. The comments that's just on the Instagram. It's been posted all over TikTok, all over Twitter. I think the comments are egregious. They're horrible. They're disgusting. Some of you guys were laughing, but I mean, like, let's remember here, there's a guy who
Ridiculous.
got, like, this guy's going to be permanently injured and disabled for life. Like, burns are serious.
They're the horrible.
Like, they're disfiguring. You're going to have permanent pain issues. So just like to point that out.
I think I was
You guys-
laughing because it was and this probably isn't going to get me any likes. I don't mean that kind of likes, but
Sure.
because it's mocking all the false accusations from women for SA.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Not because the man was
it's irony,
of
you're
what
saying.
happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if that makes it any better, but that's
It's just the internet.
It's so silly and ridiculous.
Everyone,
That's why we're laughing.
they want to get likes on their comment. That's what it really is.
Yeah, like I don't think that comedy is about taking her side. It's about finding the irony, that
Yeah.
using that kind of humor.
I think a lot of people actually are taking her side.
Oh, well, some
Really?
Oh, yeah.
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 Oh my
Let's
god.
ask- let's
I think
ask
all
the
of them were
feminists.
taking.
femmes.
Wait,
Yeah, the
I
femmes
just-
are.
I've never
Oh,
even
well,
seen the story.
you disavowed the violence, if I recall. Yeah. We're going to let a couple chats come through.
Oh, TTS. Ooh, ooh.
Christopher Scott, great thanks for the endorsement. The next time a woman is being a misandrist, I can light her on fire, and if she stops being a misandrist, it's a net positive. What a love. Response to this, Jazz?
How is misandry affecting you in your day to day? Because misogyny, I think we all can agree in some way has affected us personally.
I disagree.
What is misandry?
Especially,
Like
It's
hating men.
hatred, contempt, or prejudice towards
Oh,
men.
I didn't know that there was a terminology for that.
I didn't. Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
would I disagree with your
Explain itself.
categorization. So this is like a common and feminist argument. Essentially, you're saying misogyny kills, misandry hurts feelings. Basically,
Yeah.
Is that your position? That's your argument?
I wouldn't have worded it that way, but I don't disagree with the way that you just.
Well, that's the common and
described it.
feminist framing of it. Is
Yeah, it's like when-
misandry is either harmless or not that bad, whereas misogyny is like very harmful and kills women essentially.
He made a women in the kitchen joke. Like that was it. You know how? Like that's just funny. People can't laugh anymore about anything.
Can I ask you a question? So if misandry being non-lethal, which I don't grant, it's very disputable, but if it makes it less of a concern, wouldn't it logically follow that every other kind of bigotry it's not as big of a deal as long as we ensure no one is killed?
What do you mean?
Well, essentially, your position is well, misandry not really that bad, but misogyny, like at its worst, women are killed.
Well,
right?
I'm saying the reason for misogyny is, and also I'm not necessarily a misogynist, but I'm saying if somebody says they hate men, it's most likely because they have experienced some sort of violence from men.
Or wait,
Whereas
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Whereas if someone's a misandrist, I mean, that's what I meant. If they're a misandrist, then they've probably experienced some form of violence against man. Whereas if a man is a misogynist, they're not really experienced violence from women. They just hate women. I'm reiterating the statement.
Yeah, how do you come to that conclusion? Like, that's just an assertion. How did you arrive there?
Because the numbers,
The numbers?
yeah, violence against women, assault,
Well, sure. Well,
murder.
A couple, I suppose, counter arguments here. First, I would point out that if you look at homosexual relationships, so you look at lesbian relationships, gay relationships, and also I'll include the heterosexual stats on that. The incidents of domestic violence are the highest in lesbian relationships. They're the lowest in gay relationships, so 2 men. And then, so it's lesbian relationships, 2 women, highest levels of domestic violence. Then you have heterosexual relationships, man, woman, and then the lowest incidence rate of interpartner violence is gay men.
Mm-hmm.
So how could it possibly be when you have 2 men in a
Yeah.
relationship where conceivably men are allegedly more violent than women, they're the least violent, but when you have 2 women in a
Yeah.
relationship, they're the most violent? How could that be?
Men are more violent